Welcome to episode 3 of Football in Full Force. In this episode, we're going to take a look at our first training block of the 25-26 season. We're also going to talk through one of my favorite terms that I've heard on the fields for over 20 years, and that's when people shout, spread out. So, a majority of this week's podcast was recorded last week in anticipation of coming out. You might notice that I'm not in the current studio or pseudo studio that we record. I'm actually in a hotel room out in Kansas City working on my A license. But I spent some time during my traveling this morning and preparing last night after the tournament, kind of reflecting on the content we were about to put out this week. So, let me take a step back and paint a picture as to what the goal of this week's episode is. When we recorded last week, the primary goal was to bring light as to what the first training block for our 25-26 season is. Our first training block is titled Read and Support with Intent. The other piece we wanted to highlight was this concept or idea of spreading out. So if you've been around the soccer fields for long enough, you've probably heard this term shouted time and time again that our players need to spread out. And so although the intent of that phrase is good, for our players and our coaches and our teams within our club, we have to go so much deeper than just spreading out. Um, we want our players to move with much more purpose and much more intent. So let me provide a couple examples here to kind of help lay out why spreading out not only doesn't provide enough information, but oftentimes can be very misleading for our players. So to spread out, typically, this phrase gets used when there's a lot of players around a ball, or there's not a lot of space to move a ball, but there's a lot of congestion, a lot of pressure around the ball. So in these moments of games, these actually typically aren't moments of a game where we're in possession. They're usually transition moments where we don't really know if we even have the ball, or if we're going to keep the ball, or if our opponent's going to win the ball. So let's take a look at all three of those little scenarios. The first one in a transition moment. If we start spreading out in the middle of a transition moment, and let's say we have a player or two battling for a ball, our opponents have a player or two battling for a ball, and one or two of our players start moving away from the ball or lack confidence in that moment because they don't know if they should win a ball or if they should spread out, we really are at risk of opening ourselves up, and we're probably a lot less likely to recover the ball in that transition moment. So it's really, it really can cause some confusion for players and really not lead to much success. If we take the flip side and look at what happens if we lose the ball in that moment, now we're just at risk of being countered and opening ourselves up, right? Let's take the most positive example there and say we do win possession of the ball and we do start to spread out. If our players start spreading out, that doesn't really imply any direction or any intent, right? So that could mean two or three players just start running away from the ball. It means they could start running backwards. They could be running into players. They could be hiding behind their opponents. There's just not enough going on there to use this idea of spreading out. We need our players to be much more intentional in their movements, and that's why we use the words read and support. If we go back to our core player behaviors, we want them to be aware, be active, and be assertive. So it all starts with that idea of being aware. And that's the idea of reading the situation. Read the situation. Where are our opponents? Where is the space? What is my role even? Where am I supposed to go? How can I support this moment? So we need our players to first read that moment. And this can be slow at times. The second thing, we want them to support. This is the action. This is the being active. They have to physically move into these spaces. That may mean they go somewhere to get the ball. That may mean they just go somewhere to create some space for a teammate to get the ball, or allow the ball player to just dribble forward because they created a nice channel for them. But we want them to read and support that moment. And ultimately, we need intent. We need them to think and act with intent. This instills that assertive nature. This is that belief, that confidence that we as players and our team as a collective is going to go be successful. So hopefully we kind of deconstructed this idea of spreading out. I get it. It's a term that we're probably going to use at times, but it's definitely an expression and a term that we want to start working away from, as we want our players to be much more aware, much more active, and ultimately more assertive on the field. In the next section, we'll get in a little more detail as to what the training block should look like and what you should hopefully see in the game environment. Now let's dive into our first training block, titled Read and Support with Intent. Let's paint a picture as to what this looks like. So the moment in the game is when we're in possession. Not a transitional moment, but we have clear possession of the ball, and we have time to make some plays. The objective, we're looking to build our attack in these moments. So we have possession, and we're looking to progress our team and the ball up the field, ultimately trying to score goals. The principle, as a reminder, a principle is how we want to do things during the game. So the principle is what we use to title the blocks as well, read and support with intent. So we want our players to read the game, provide support with the intent of meeting our objective, which in this case, to go progress up the field and go create goals. So read and support with intent. The next bit, let's dissect it through the lens of each one of those core player behaviors. As a reminder, or if you didn't have time to catch last episode where we introduced them, our three core player behaviors for each player in our club is to be aware, be active, and be assertive. So first, be aware. This is at the core, or right at the center of this principle and this training block. Can our players read the game? If our players are aware in these moments, they're looking at the field, they're reading our opponent's movements, they're identifying space, they're trying to take as much information in as they can to help support the team, which takes us to our second piece, the support. Ties nicely with our second core player behavior, being active. So now we have to provide the support. So after I read the moment, I now have to physically move or I have to be active to provide that support. More often than not, our players need to be providing width and depth, changing the angle and changing the distance of support relative to the ball. The second piece to this is our players have to accept that by providing the support and being active, they're not just moving or providing support to get the ball. They might be moving to manipulate our opponent's shape to create space for our teammates to attack. If I'm an outside back and I provide more width and change my angle of support, and I make an opponent follow me out wide, that may have just created a channel for my teammate to then progress on the dribble and just go take it on their own. And that's a wonderful moment that often gets overlooked. It's something that we as a staff need to focus on with our players to make sure they understand that these movements aren't just to receive the ball, but they provide space for the team to progress. And if I made an action that allowed my teammate to progress, I did an excellent job. And our team is now working towards accomplishing that objective of building an attack, ultimately getting goals. The last core behavior, being assertive. I'm going to use an example here from a game I coached 2 nights ago. We had our left-sided midfielder on the ball. The player in front of them, the forward, was making a diagonal run from the center of the field to the wide channel. Not a bad idea. The challenge or the issue was the run didn't have any conviction. It wasn't very assertive. The player making the run did not believe that it was the right play. They were doing it because they felt like they had to, so they were a bit hesitant in their movements. What happened is, if we take a look at our left midfielder who had the ball, the center back was able to step up and make a play on the ball, ultimately tackling the ball and starting an attack for them. I walked away from that moment wondering, how did we not progress into the final third there? How did this moment of the game, where we created a 2v1 in the middle of the field, not lead to us going to get a chance on goal? And it was that. It comes down to the run lacking that assertiveness, lacking that conviction, that belief. If our forward made that run on a diagonal into that wide channel with conviction and belief, and they were assertive, I fully believe that center back would have hesitated, trying to decide, do I follow the runner or do I step to the ball? If we can create that moment of confusion in our opponents, because our body language, our decisions are assertive and confident, it's going to lead to far more success, and we'll be able to progress up the field more consistently, and ultimately scoring more goals or creating more chances on goal, at least. To tie it back to the big picture, club philosophy. The core of our club playing philosophy is to be in control of games. One of the easiest ways to control games is to maintain possession. This principle of reading and supporting with intent is at the heart of controlling possession in a game. So this first little 2 to 3 week training block is really going to set the stage for what it is we're looking for out of our players, not just in the fall season or across the 25-26 year, but over the next 5, 6, 7 years that they're playing within the club. In the next segment, we're going to take a game moment and we're going to use a little animation to help diagram what this could look like during a match. Now we're going to tie this training block to a game moment. We're going to hopefully provide some context so we have an idea of what this training should bring to the game and how our players should be looking to play the game. So let me paint the picture for you real quick. We're in a 7v7 game. Our goalkeeper just saved a shot. Our goalkeeper just rolled the ball to our center back, or who we're labeled our defensive midfielder, and they just received it across their body with their eyes up the field. Wonderful position to be in, as they can read and analyze the entire field here. Now we're going to shift our focus to the other 5 players, or 6 if we include our goalkeeper. The principle, read and support with intent. Our first behavior that supports it, being aware. We're going to look at that winger on top of the screen and talk about what information they can identify to help them become aware to hopefully inform their decision making. So teammate's about to get a little bit of pressure from that number 9. They're marked up by player number 7. If they look up the field, they can see their forwards in a good position and actually in a 1v1 space, which is a wonderful spot for a forward. And then we also have good balance in the middle of the field there with our center mid. So as that wide player, they want to identify not just the ball and where they may get it from. They want to identify a couple options to where they can progress the ball. Let's take a look at what decision they make here. Took some width. Our opponent got caught watching the ball. Our winger changed their angle of support, got out wide all the way to the touchline. So now they can receive the ball across their body, facing forward, hopefully able to progress up the field. This is a wonderful moment in a game for us, and if we can recreate this picture in the wide channel consistently in games, we're going to have a lot of success. You'll notice the forward also moved with the play a little bit. They started to get a little bit wider. Our attacking mid is reading the play wonderfully and actually just held some space. You'll notice our opponent is starting to chase the ball a little bit, which actually gave our center mid more space in the middle of the field. So all they really have to do is just kind of adjust their angle of support. Let's play a slightly different scenario here. And let's say that wide player, number 7, our opponent, goes with our winger. Still the correct decision by our winger. And that's a huge component here. Our wide player needs to read the pressure and change their angle of support and get all the way out into that wide channel. Some of you may have noticed it right away. So if we're looking at this from a team perspective, we're still able to progress into this space. If you shift your eyes up the field, you'll notice our forwards in a 1v1 moment there. And so now our defensive mid can skip that wide player and play it all the way to the forward. This is an excellent moment. If you look at the whole field picture, we actually have a 3v2 starting here, which is excellent. We should be able to create a ton of chances out of these moments in a game. If this happens, this is actually a better opportunity for us to progress and get up the field, and we have a 3v2 moment started here. Bringing our focus all the way back to that winger. If they don't make the decision to provide that width, if they're not working with the intent of the team to progress up the field, this option never develops. Starts with their awareness, starts with the winger identifying the pressure in the middle of the field, being active and providing that support, and then moving with good confidence, knowing that it's not about them receiving the ball, but it's about the team progressing. Let's continue to dive into this moment and play out some other outcomes. So let's say 9's pressure was too good and our center back or the defensive mid there was not able to progress on a pass for one reason or another. Our goalkeeper did an excellent job here providing an angle of support. So again, very aware, very active. They're willing to get the ball and help us to progress here. The difference in this moment is we switched the point of attack or we switched the field because we weren't able to progress on the first side. If you look at the situation, this opportunity may actually be a little bit better in that we have a 4v1 moment set up. So now our goalkeeper can look down the field to play that nice progressing pass through pressure. And again, we found that 3v2, an excellent situation to be in. This would not occur if our goalkeeper was not aware and didn't have their eyes down the field looking for an opportunity to progress that pass. One last scenario to look at. Goalkeeper gets the ball. Our opponent remains a little more compact here, and they stay inside, taking that progressing pass away. So now our goalkeeper makes the decision to play the wide player. A 2v2 moment in a wide channel is a successful moment, so we should be able to figure out a way to progress here via the dribble or the pass. Hopefully going through that game moment provides a bit of context as to what we're looking to do or what we're looking to bring to the games from training. But this would be an excellent example of 7 players on the field looking to read and support that moment with intent. In the last segment of this episode, we're going to take a look at how we assess and evaluate our players' development. We're going to do it through something called key performance indicators, or what we'll refer to as KPIs. We're going to take a look at these KPIs as they progress from one zone to the next as we evaluate our players' development over the years. You'll notice the language is very similar and the ideas are all tied to the same principle and same behaviors. We just need to add a little bit more depth and detail as our players get older and progress. Start with zone 1, or our foundational zone. At this level, when they exit at the end of a U10 season, they should all be able to scan before they receive the ball, meaning looking around for information. They might not fully know what to grab yet, but they're looking for information. They should be able to receive a ball facing forward with their hips and their body shape going forward, and they should be able to move into spaces away from their opponents. If our players at 10 years old can accomplish this, then they're on target. Let's shift to the 9v9 game, or our developmental zone. Now we want our players to scan for opportunities to progress the ball. So all players, when they leave 9v9 at U12, should be able to scan the field and look for opportunities to progress. If we ask our players what they're looking for or what they're analyzing, they should be looking downfield. What are our opponents doing? Where is the space? How can we get behind our opponents? The second one would be they definitely need to be able to receive it across their body and adjust those support angles, and they should be able to do this really consistently. This should be something that happens almost every time they receive the ball in a building phase, cross their body, facing forward. Those will be our key performance indicators at the end of developmental zone, so 12 years old. Our last zone, our competitive zone, now we add a little bit more depth and detail. Our players should be scanning before they receive the ball, during, after they receive the ball, constantly looking for information as our opponent's shape is always changing. As the game gets more complicated, our players need to collect more information. The second piece to it, they need to learn to disguise some of these decisions. So how can they add disguise? How can they add a little bit of deception in their game so that they're not so predictable? If they receive the ball across their body facing up the field, how can they use that to manipulate their opponent's positioning to maybe attack the space inside or maybe attack the space outside, depending on what they're able to sell to their opponent? The last bit, they should be able to adjust based on the ball carrier's cues, meaning if their teammate has the ball, what adjustments need to be made in that moment based on the ball carrier as well as our opponents. By the time our players exit at U18 or so, they should be able to execute those KPIs. Just wanted to highlight how this principle, reading and supporting with intent, will grow with our players across all ages and stages. As we as a club and as a coaching staff look at our players' development year over year, we'll use these KPIs to see where our players are going, where they're heading, and what supports individual players may need to ensure that they're hitting the targets to be successful in the later stages of their career. This information will also drive our evaluation process so that players and parents alike are able to use this information to maybe target individual development outside of a team training environment. One of the things that's really impressed me over the last couple of years with this club is the amount of work individuals are doing, not only within our club supplemental programs, but outside finding their own supplemental programs. So this information players can take into those spaces and help to grow and develop their abilities as a player. Now we're going to wrap up this episode with a couple key takeaways. Number one, the idea of spreading out just isn't enough anymore. Our players need to be much more intentional. They got to read the game and figure out how to provide that support for their teammates. The second bit,
being aware or awareness and the ability to scan and position themselves for better passing options or creating space for teammates is at the core of what we want our players to do at every age and stage. Last bit, reading and support across all levels. This should look slightly different, but as the game progresses, this principle again is at the core of everything we're looking to do as a club. This should really drive how our teams play the game and what the game looks like at all ages and stages. As a final note, you maybe didn't see many of these sessions this week as some of our teams were preparing for a tournament this weekend. Sometimes our coaches needed a little bit of flexibility in sticking or adhering to a curriculum when you have games right there that first weekend. So you maybe didn't see some of this stuff coming out through training just yet, but starting next week and then the following week, you're really going to see this at the core of our training sessions. Hope you enjoyed and hope you found a bit of information here to help you in your child's soccer journey down the road. Any suggestions or ideas on content, please let us know. In the next episode, you're going to see some good resources coming out for our Zone 1 and Zone 2 players to help provide support in their development.